For nearly 3 decades, the name JonBenet Ramsey has carried a weight that never seems to lift. A 6-year-old girl, found dead in her family's basement the day after Christmas in 1996, and to this day, not a single person has been arrested or convicted for what happened to her. But now, after years of silence, the people closest to her are finally speaking, and what they're sharing is both heartbreaking and deeply revealing. Burke Ramsey was only 9 years old when his little sister was taken. While the rest of the world mourned, he was thrust into a media storm that showed no mercy, not even for a grieving child. People whispered, speculated, and looked at the family not just with sympathy, but with suspicion. Every move the Ramseys made was analyzed and picked apart. Somehow, even Burke, a little boy who barely understood what death meant, became a subject of dark theories and public accusation. After 20 years of silence, Burke finally spoke out in an interview with Dr. Phil. His voice cracked with emotion as he looked back on that painful chapter. He remembered standing at his sister's funeral, staring at her tiny casket, noticing how something looked different about her eyes. When his father gently told him that JonBenet was now in heaven and then broke down in tears, Burke said he couldn't help but cry too. That image, a father collapsing in grief while trying to comfort his surviving child, says everything about the devastation this family carried. JonBenet had been strangled, her skull cracked, and there were deeply disturbing signs of abuse. What made the situation even more confusing was the ransom note found inside the house. It demanded exactly $118,000, a number that oddly matched a recent work bonus her father John had received. The note was long, oddly detailed, and written on paper from inside the house using one of Patsy Ramsey's own notepads. Who would have the time or the calmness to write something so elaborate while committing a crime? That question alone led many to believe the person responsible was someone who already knew the family well. Burke became a focal point of suspicion. People wondered why he hadn't come out of his room during the chaos. But when asked directly whether he had hurt his sister, Burke didn't hesitate. Absolutely not. He said he stayed in bed, confused, trusting his parents to handle whatever was happening downstairs. He was 9 years old. People later pointed out that he appeared to smile during parts of the interview, but analysts explained it was simply a nervous reaction, not a sign of anything sinister. Still, the public judged. It always does. For his father John, the weight of those years has never lifted. He watched the investigation stall and stumble for nearly 3 decades. He watched his wife Patsy carry the burden of public accusation until cancer took her in 2006, without her ever knowing who was responsible for their daughter's death. John has never stopped fighting for answers, and his frustration runs deeper than grief. It's about a burning sense of injustice that has never been addressed. From the very beginning, John believes law enforcement made a critical mistake. Rather than following every possible lead, they focused almost entirely on the family. That tunnel vision poisoned everything that came after. Investigators became defensive, doubled down on their assumptions, and the longer the case dragged on, the harder it became for anyone to admit that the investigation had gone off the rails from day one. The morning JonBenet was found should have been handled with precision. Instead, it was chaos. For 6 hours after police arrived, people walked freely in and out of the house. Evidence was touched, moved, and in some cases lost entirely. It was actually John himself, not a trained detective, who eventually found his daughter's body in the basement after an officer casually told him to have a look around. John picked her up and carried her upstairs. No one can blame a grieving father for that instinct, but experts say it significantly damaged the integrity of the crime scene. From that moment, the investigation was already compromised. One man tried to change the direction of the case. His name was Lou Smith, a retired detective with an extraordinary track record. Over 200 homicide cases solved, including many cold cases. When brought into the investigation, Lou went through every report and every piece of evidence with fresh eyes. He reached a different conclusion from the local officers. He believed the evidence didn't point to the Ramseys at all, and was convinced that an intruder had broken in that night, that JonBenet's death was the result of a kidnapping gone terribly wrong. His theory was met with resistance. The bolder detectives pushed back and dismissed him at every turn. After just a year, Lou left in frustration. But he never stopped working. He gathered thousands of tips over the years and built a list of potential suspects, names the police had never seriously investigated. Before he passed away in 2010, he handed that list to his daughter Cindy, who has been quietly continuing his work ever since, collecting DNA samples from everyone on the list, waiting for the day a match might finally be possible. That day may be closer than many think. In 2008, DNA from an unknown male was found on JonBenet's clothing, enough for the district attorney to formally clear John and Patsy and issue a public apology to the family. John appreciated the gesture, but it wasn't justice. The DNA existed, but it matched no one in any database, and the case fell quiet again. Then in 2018, something gave John new hope. The Golden State Killer, a man who had evaded capture for over 40 years, was finally identified using a method called genetic genealogy. Unlike traditional DNA testing, which compares only a few dozen markers, this technology analyzes 1 million points in a person's DNA to build family trees and identify suspects who were never in any database. John visited one of the labs working with this technology and was stunned by what he saw. If it could find a predator hidden for 4 decades, why couldn't it find the person who harmed his daughter? DNA expert Sika Moore, who has helped solve over 200 cold cases using this method, is confident that if given access to JonBenet's evidence, real progress could finally be made. But that access has not been granted. The DNA remains locked in the Boulder Police Department's evidence room. John has repeatedly asked the authorities to allow an independent lab to test it using modern technology, and he has been met with silence and resistance each time. He believes the detectives still in charge are more focused on protecting their reputation than finding the truth. Out of desperation, he took his request all the way to the governor of Colorado, asking for intervention. What moved him most were the ordinary people who signed the petition in support, strangers who simply believed that an innocent child deserved justice. John knows he may never get the answers he's looking for. He admitted it quietly and painfully. He doesn't know if the case will ever be solved, but he will keep pushing for as long as he's alive, not out of anger, but because JonBenet deserved better. She deserved a life. She deserved to grow up. When asked what he would say to her, if he could, John's voice trembled. He said he would tell her he was sorry. Sorry he couldn't protect her. That was his job as her father. That is the grief he carries every single day. But he also knows, without any doubt, that she was deeply loved. And he holds on to the hope that someday, in some way, they will be together again.